childhood educator working here in our community. We have invited her here today to participate in a conversation, and we would just love to hear a little bit about who you are, your role, your experiences, and what being an early childhood educator is really all about to you. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. I was just hoping, I think we'll just dive in and get started. If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, you know, who you are, what your current role is, and just offer us a little introduction.
Okay, well, as you can tell by my accent, I'm originally from Scotland, and that's when I started in the field 30 odd years ago, actually. So I've seen a lot of different things happen through the whole child-centred movement and everything. I started off in a social work kind of setting, and I went from there to be a nanny in Canada for a couple of years, and then went back and ran a private nursery school. And I did that for 3 years, but I really wanted to get into the schools. Actually, that's where my heart was. So I came here with my family 13 years ago, had to retrain at Conestoga because, well, with the access course, the equivalency course actually, so I didn't have to do the whole thing from an exam, a 3-hour exam in Toronto. They could tell where you are, you know, in terms of your philosophy and everything, so they could tell how much you need. So it was a really good experience for me. 1 term at Conestoga is all I had to do, because obviously the UK have a similar way of working as they do here, so I was lucky that I didn't have to do 2 years. I hadn't done PowerPoint presentations or anything like that, because obviously when I trained it was a long time ago, so I learned a lot. Worked with lab schools for a little while here, and then got into the school board, and that's where I've been for 8 years now as a designated early childhood educator. So I think, yeah, and I've covered so many different areas, like especially in Scotland, because I did get into the schools, and I did forest kindergarten as well. And yeah, it set me up well for coming to Canada when the play-based thing was really taken off in the school. So I was really happy to have that background, so I was able to continue. So very happy in my job now.
Wonderful. So you were saying that you are then a designated early childhood educator with, are you with the Waterloo Region District School for Life?
Yes.
Very nice. So very local to this community. I think
Yes.
a lot of our students, you know, are curious about that role, and, you know, are perhaps considering themselves wanting to pursue a career there. So that's great that you can share some of those experiences with us.
Yeah.
Jackie, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about, you know, like why did you want to become an early childhood educator? You said you've been in the field doing this for, you know, 30 years. You clearly love working with children and families. Yeah. So why did you take this path?
I think that's a really good question, actually, and it's simple, but it's so important. And for us as you know, mentors in the field as well, asking our Conestoga students like why they decided to be an ECE is a really good question, because some people are using it as a platform for something else, and so they're looking at a whole different side of the job than someone like myself who really wants to you know, like be an early childhood educator. I'm not using it to get anywhere else, so your expectations should possibly be a bit different and everything. So yeah, for me, I think looking back, I had, yeah, I was the oldest kid in my neighbourhood kind of thing, so I ended up babysitting a lot for kids that were just not that much younger than me, but, you know, and everyone's telling me how great I was, and their kids were so better behaved when they were with me and whatever. And, you know, lots of girls are in that position, but some of us have that whole nurturing piece, you know. And for me, I never wanted to be a teacher. The thought of it would, you know, it just never even occurred to me really. But I wanted to work with maybe underprivileged children. I think initially when I was very young, I remember wanting to go to Africa and help these children, but then after volunteering in my own community before I did any courses, I realised there's a lot of underprivileged children in my own community, you know, the next neighbourhood across kind of thing. And I remember volunteering in this place that was half run by social work, half education, and it was purpose built, and it was for not just troubled families. They were integrated with a kindergarten that was attached to the school.
Okay.
And it was all like round walls, and it was really well resourced. A lot of money went into it. And as soon as I walked through that door, I knew that's where I wanted to be.
There we go.
Yeah, so this amazing nursery that was purposely built for children in a sort of rougher area and everything was wonderful. And I walked through that door and knew that I wanted to be there. They had so many community things going on. The staff did home visits and everything. They ran a thrift store. They had a kitchen where they could help families cook and just really young mothers and everything. It was really nice, and the staff were fantastic. It had gardens, but I think that the best part was how well resourced it was. So you were able to guide that, just guide the development, really, of these children through so many different exciting things. So that's when I went there, that's where I wanted to work. And when I finished my course, I did get a job in an identical building, but it was in another town. So that was really good. But yeah, I think that what drove me was maybe wanting to work with underprivileged children, and I felt like I wanted to make a difference. But maybe subconsciously, it was just a nurturing thing. However, I've loved being in the field and doing all these different things. So it's, some of us, my good friend who trained at the same time as me is still in one of those places actually. She travelled the world, but now she's back there. And I remember us as teenagers saying, oh, if we could ever get a job there, that would just be the best thing, So she's there now finishing her last few years, and here I am over here. So yeah, so many different things. But yeah, I've never regretted any of it. It's a great job.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jackie. I think that's so wonderful. I think a lot of us get into this field because we do want to make a difference, and we do feel this connection or this passion to working with children and other individuals. So thank you for articulating that so nicely for us.
Thank you.
What I'm really particularly curious about, and I always like asking this question, is really like, what inspires you most about the field of early learning? Like, what do you love most about the job? What keeps you coming back every day?
Yeah, well, for me, that's an easy one. It's because it's relationship based. I think that's the thing. I'm an only child, and I had a big family of cousins and everything, and loved being with them. And my neighbourhood was full of kids, so it's not like I was really lonely or anything. But I always was sad when anybody went home or had holidays, and I just thrived on these relationships, and getting not that I need praise. I'm past that insecurity thing. It's not so much that, but the kind of job where you're told regularly, you've got parents with tears in their eyes saying how much of a difference you've made in their families' lives and everything. It's that is probably the main thing for me. I mean, there's so many other things too, but yeah, the good feedback. Again, the relationships not just with the families, but the staff that you meet and the people from outside agencies. It's just an interesting world, and looking at the whole support network there for families is really great and really interesting. So you could never get bored. As I said, there's so many avenues you could take in this job, and maybe you could be an ECE for a while, but then decide you want to do speech and language. There's that's what I love about it, just the flexibility, but the fact that it's relationship based, I think, for me.
Perfect. I love that you brought that up, because I think that's something that we really try to talk about in this program is, that everything we do as early childhood educators is built on this foundation of relationships. So to hear you say that that's, what inspires you most about the field is so wonderful and so reassuring that, we're doing something right.
Yes, we are.
Very nice. Okay. So one of the things that we're hoping to, capture and hear a little bit about, Jackie, especially because you're, working directly in the school board in kindergarten classrooms with children, we recognize that depending on, the age group you work with, or, just the different settings of where early childhood educators work, your role in supporting play might look a little different. So we're just hoping if you could share a little bit about what you feel your role is in supporting children's play in a kindergarten classroom.
Yeah, well, again, I would go back to these early days when I was babysitting. Because the kids were not much younger than me, it evolved into this sort of relationship where, I would say to them, well, what do you want to do today, and where will we go, and just not take their lead. It was just a respectful group, I think. So when I came into the field, that to me was really natural. It was not like about me wanting to be this teacher and tell people what to do. It was like really listening to the other kids and seeing what they're interested in. And even, you know, being a mother as well, you know, I had a boy who was obsessed with sharks and everything. So of course you buy books on sharks, and you get the little sharks, and then you teach him all the shark names as far as he wants to go with that. So it's that's how I work in the field as well. Like I always say to my Conestoga students when they come, just make the connections first. You know, it's great if you've got lots of great ideas to come in with as well, but just take your time and really get to know the kids. And that's what I'm going to be doing in September. I'll have lots of new kids, and luckily I know some of them already. But you know, just see what makes them tick, and because if you've got a strong connection with them, and you know what they like, you could go way further with them. You know, like, you know, my son wouldn't hold a pencil or anything, you know, for anything. But if you find something he's interested in, and you know, he wants to draw these different sharks or whatever, then you're going to be developing their skills at a pace that they're ready for. But you cannot do that unless you have a good relationship with them. So, you know, to anybody who's coming into the field, just take your time and really get to know them. And I think you'll realize that it's just great. You know, you have these options of, you know, this group will learn literacy through that, and that but the other group won't. You'll have to do a whole other thing with them. And that's the exciting thing about the curriculum. You know, it's evolving all the time, and you have to differentiate, and it stops it from being really boring and just you coming in with this idea. You know, just the kids have so many great ideas. So I tend to go with that. The parents appreciate it because they know that you really know their kids, you know, and especially, you know, if we're helping to write report cards as well, or documentation is used, certainly. If it's, you know, if it's the boy that likes sharks and they see that he's written some stuff to do with what he's interested in, they realise it's authentic. You're not just making something up there, you know. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's how I guide play. Certainly, just look at what they're interested in.
Lovely. And I think the one piece that you mentioned, Jackie, that really resonated with me was this need to just slow down. We don't need to
Yes,
come in with activities and materials and all of these things all the time, all at once, but really just slowing down and taking that time to build that connection, that
yeah,
relationship, and let it unfold from there. I've
yes,
been I what this is reminding me of is I was visiting a toddler program at one point, and I remember it was just a group of 5 toddlers, the educator and myself, and we just sat down on the playground. And I kid you not, it was probably 45 minutes of just sitting and watching this gentleman mow the lawn.
yes,
So slow, but it was so like the conversations that happened, the cuddles, the connection, the like, it was just one of those moments where so much happened, but
yes.
nothing happened. And it was magical. So that's what it reminded me of when you said just to sometimes slow down and make those connections, that those are important moments too.
Yeah, they are. And it is as easy as that, actually. And then once you're there for a little while and you understand well, we have the 4 frames in our curriculum now that we go by: the belonging and contributing, self-reg, math and literacy, and problem solving. 4 things to remember, you know. So when you're having these conversations, you could link it to the, you know, oral language or whatever, if they're looking at the lawnmower, or problem solving, like, how do you think the grass is shorter now, or whatever. So it's very easy. It's not, I think a lot of people are scared and they think, oh, there's 4 whole frames and there's like 50 threads in each one. But that's great, because anything the kids are doing, you could link to any frame, actually. But, you know, I would tend to keep in our program anyway, keep the frames in your mind, which is easy once you've been in it for a long time, and just see which one it mostly represents or whatever, you know. So it doesn't have to be hard. And when you're displaying that, like I like on the walls in my class, I like to see how an interest began, and you can have pictures and that way, and then how it evolved, because you don't know how it's going to evolve. And then what did we learn from that? So when students can see that, you know, they didn't come in with a big plan, but so-and-so was interested in this, and then this is where we took it,
Mhm.
You know, it's you feel like you're really doing your job the way you should be doing it, you know.
Yeah, it's really trusting the process of it and being very comfortable with not
Yeah.
necessarily knowing what's coming next. And that's the excitement about the role too, right?
Yeah, and just letting people think, well, that's okay. They probably maybe had a math curriculum thing in mind, and that's where they wanted to go with it, but it actually ended up being more of a science thing. Well, that's even better, right?
Right.
You've let the children, you've gone with what they want to do. So, yeah, it sounds difficult, but you know, if you have a good mentor who works like that and just explains it to you and makes it easier, then you can have a great classroom and a good ethos, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very nice. So thank you, Jackie. This is also making me start thinking about too that, our role isn't, we don't just play with children all day. I know sometimes people like to believe that about our field, and we know
Yes.
that's not true. We do some
No.
really meaningful work. And I think a lot of the other aspects of the role is in terms of like a lot of the caregiving roles and transitions and things that are maybe outside of what we would consider play and learning, but is
Yeah.
still a large component of our role. I was just curious, how would you describe what, your role looks like with routines and transitions in a kindergarten classroom?
Yeah, well, again, you have to be really open-minded because there's always, even as long as I've been in this field, there's so many surprises that come along. You know, kids that have quirks that you never even knew about. You know, but I think in general, what works really well is just involving the kids in their day, and you know, you need to set boundaries for them to feel secure, but give them some freedom within these boundaries as well, and let them help, you know, create a visual schedule, for instance, and um, so they know what's next and what's next. And you know, some kids might need a bit more help in terms of, you know, first we're, you know, I know you want to do this right now, but first we're going to do this, you know. That's often important, but just to bear in mind that some children, if there is a way that you could be a wee bit more flexible and give them a choice, maybe they don't do well in gym or something, you could say, like, you know, do you want to try gym today, or do you want to go for a walk with Miss So and so or whatever? So they have a choice, but you're still in control. It's not like letting them, you know, take over because they're too young. But they so yeah, get the children involved as much as you can, and then ask yourself, can I give him or her more choices that
Mhm.
might help them to still feel like we respect that they're not able for this yet. You know, hopefully they might be later, but not quite yet, you know. And again, if you know them well, maybe they like singing, you know, maybe if you sing that song to help them to get to from A to B or whatever, or to help them get their clothes on or make it a race, or, but again, you know, you want to make the connections with the kids and the families actually, and talk to the parents about what works at home, try and make it a wee bit of an extension of the home if it's working at home, you know. So I think, yeah, just involve them as much and respect that they're not all the same, and they won't all just do what we want them to do, you know.
That's
Yeah.
right. Our role isn't meant to be transactional. You do this, you do that, line up, sit down. It doesn't need to be this transaction. But what keeps coming back to this foundation of relationships that,
Yes.
respecting that child and offering them choices and some agency over their own bodies in their day is really going, you're going to get a lot more in return from that, from those children.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, this was in Scotland actually, and I worked in a really rough school. It was like a really rough area, and it was really a great experience actually. But I remember one child who screamed every day when it was story time, and I was new to that school at that time, and I saw him just, he was bright red, you know, just screaming, and the educator would make him, no, this is what we're doing, we must sit right now, kind of thing. And I suggested, you know, how about we give him the choice and say, you know, you can have the story with us, or you could play Lego over there, kind of thing, right? So what do you want to do? So one educator wasn't very keen on it, just said, no, they must, you know. But luckily the other one said, you know, but let's try it because he's screaming every day. The story's awful because they're trying to read the story over this thing. And, you know, what happened was he did play with the Lego, but he listened to the story while he was playing with the Lego. So that's the kind of thing when I'm saying, you give them choices, but you're still conning them into like listening to the story kind of thing, or not necessarily, but he's hearing that you respect him. But anyway, cut a long story short, after 2 weeks, he was first on that carpet every day for story. It was just, he did not want to be told what to do. He wanted to have this choice kind of thing, so, give him the choice, but within reason,
Yeah.
So,
oh, and that's where we really, as early childhood educators, really get into that digging and thinking deeply with our pedagogical thought process, being like, wondering like, why is that? What was it about that story time initially, or why is it that child, didn't necessarily want it to be told what to do, but when offered the choice, chose to, come listen to the book.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's so fascinating and so meaningful when you kind of figure it out. It's a very rewarding moment when you kind of find that happy balance and everyone's happy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, great.
Yes, so much easier on us too.
Exactly. Because I also think too, like, thinking from an adult perspective, like, I don't necessarily like to be told you need to do this and you need to do that. And if we start shifting our perspective and our image of the child that little bit, it really does change our approach, or how, we want to approach children in the field.
Yeah, and I think also telling them why you want them to do it helps too. I know that, so I deliver the Roots of Empathy program as well, and we talk about neurons connecting up and everything, So when you get used to using that language, I would say things like, I've got this game that will really help your neurons. And they will, that's why I want you to do the game. It's up to you kind of thing. They're like, oh, it's going to help my neurons connect up. So they're like, come and do the game, or, I want you to I've got this story because it's going to teach us something about, making friends and that kind of thing. So giving them reasons, and it's not just like it's time for this or whatever, it's just, treat them with respect, and you'll get it back. Most of the time you get it back, sometimes you don't, but that's okay. There's makes it more interesting, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So Jackie, when you were talking about that, you had started mentioning too a little bit about, connecting with the families and saying, well, what works for the child at home. So you kind of already touched on a little bit with families, but I am curious about, in a kindergarten kind of FDK setting, what is it like working with families? How do you connect with families? How do they contribute to the program? What does that look like?
Well, actually, I found it very difficult to start with, because in Scotland, the parents come in with the child to start their day. They come in and they would help them get ready and whatever, and come into the actual room. And we would chat with the parents just naturally. The kids would go off and play with their friends. Again, lots of money in kindergarten in Scotland. The resources were incredible. So I was used to that, and like having these authentic chats with the families every morning, like not long, just a quick, because there's always lots of other, sometimes they don't want to talk to you, and then sometimes they do, but you were there. So I assumed it would be the same here. And the first school I was in, half the children were bussed in, so you're not seeing the families that way. And they weren't allowed in the class. The teacher was like, oh, there's no way, I'll set a date and a time that they could have, a 10-minute observation or something. So I found that really hard. But you just get, at the end of the day, we had to just make sure that we're outside, actually. That was the best thing that we could have done, I think, because if we're all outside playing at the end of the day, when the parents started to come, then you can chat with them while the kids are playing safely and, again, within reason. But then there's the bus parents that you never get to know. But there was an app called Sesame.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was really fantastic. I've always done portfolios. I'm once an ECE, always an ECE, and Laura Ashley paper, hard photographs, everything. But this app was really just great, because it had the 4 frames on it. You could take a video or a picture or whatever, and then you click on whichever frame you thought it mostly represented. But once you clicked that, all the threads came up as well. So you could say oral language or problem solving and innovating or something like that. Just click it quickly, straight to the parent's phone, and they would see their child playing and talking about worms or anything like that, and then they would click on all the little icons and it would say where that fitted into the curriculum. That was fantastic. Unfortunately, the board are not supporting that anymore. We're doing in my class, we have a website. I mean, there's obviously this, you know, technology is good, but that was the best, I thought, because of the parents know they're learning something through play, but to have it just all right there, like every photograph that came through or video is just so, you know, the kids, they're at work till 6 o'clock, but they see their child in the garden, and so that was a good way. Portfolios I love because the kids, if it's in the class as well, and again, I've got that divided into the 4 frames as well. And the kids really get to learn about the 4 frames also. And they could share it with each other. So they share their own learning. That's hard with an iPad and whatever. But if they're opening their pages and they say, oh, look, you know, there's me climbing outside, and oh, but look, there's you upside down on the blah de blah. It's I think it's so important for children to celebrate their own learning and look at how far they've come. So by the end of the year, we could say, oh, look, you've drawn yourself, but look now. And that's, you know, that's great. And of course, that's the report card at the end of the year from me. That's for the family. And you know, the family could then see what we're all about, that it's not just play. It's everything we're doing has a reason, but we want to make it fun and an extension of the home and respect them and their cultures and bring that into the programme as much as we can.
That's right. And the other thing I was thinking too, or I was curious about, Jackie, was just when you said you were using that Sesame program and you were able to send photos and everything, did families have a chance to respond to that? Like, could they also comment back?
No, not on that one.
Interesting.
But I think with this website we have, and in Google Classroom they can,
Okay.
but that's kind of, I wasn't so keen on the way that was set up, but that might be something that we're going to have to do for the next term, just in case, you know, there's another wave. But yeah, my teaching partner this year has Google Keep. And so that's great because you could just talk. You're not even typing anything now. You could take a video and talk about what they're doing, and it'll just come up in a document.
Nice.
So that's really good. Yeah, so we could share that with families as well. But yeah, I think with the website thing, like, because we want to have responses too. The communication books, we often got like nice notes in there to say, oh, thanks, we saw the pictures and everything. But I think that's going to be a thing of the past. I think portfolios still will be a thing, but I think most of it will be online stuff like Google Keep and everything. It's just evolving at such a pace, right?
That's right. It's definitely shifting because, like, I'm with you. I remember when I first started, it was very much like the paper portfolios and all their artwork would go in and
yes,
and everything, and it would start to build and build.
Yes.
Now with technology, I mean, possibilities are endless in terms of you can start reconsidering family engagement. So it's great to hear that there's so many avenues or opportunities between, like you said, the Sesame, the website, all of the Google functions that are now available. So that'll be exciting to see what that looks like, even more so in September. Of all Septembers, I think this will be the September where it will be really utilized.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, and just don't forget to, you know, a lot of families really do want to be involved as well, especially I found, like, you know, the one thing I do like about the job too is that your passions could come through. Like, I love food from all different countries. So when I have kids in my class from different cultures and they've got all these different lunches, and, you know, I'll ask the parents, you know, like, I'd like that recipe, and they could come in and cook it or whatever, you know, and then I share some of my, you know, unhealthy Scottish stuff. I always tell the kids that, you know, in Scotland, potato chips are a vegetable kind of thing, so not to worry. But yeah, keep that in mind, that some families really do, especially as an immigrant myself, and my kids were young when I came, when the teacher asked me to go in, and the school was really, they had a Celebrate Our Cultures Day actually, and we got to take food in and share it, and that made us feel really connected to the community, and it made my kids not feel like they were aliens. They were worried about starting school you know, with an accent kind of thing, but then they came into the school and realised that actually they could speak English, but although they have an accent, and a lot of their classmates did not. So it was, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too. That some families would like to be asked to come in, but again, you find out who that is through chatting with them and building relations and everything.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackie. I think the last question I have for you is really, you said you've been in the field, you've taught in Scotland, you've taught here. If I were to ask you sort of like, what's one of your biggest learnings or biggest takeaways from your experience being in ECE that you would like to share with our level 1, new students coming into our program? What would that kind of big learning or takeaway be?
Well, actually, I think somebody said to me years and years ago that, everybody has a gold nugget in them. And that resonated with me, because if you're in the field for a long time and you're with, large teams and everything, and there's lots of people with different views than you have, and lots of children that as I said, they surprise you, and they might have this behaviour that's really difficult and everything. Always look for the gold nugget and mention that, and realise that everybody has a place in the class. One PD thing I went on, again, it was in Scotland, but it was one of the best, or one of the ones that I remember most. And they did a little test thing, and it was, you're looking at your team and you're looking at who the plungers are, the waders, the toe tappers, or whatever. And it made us really think, because I was working in a big team at that time, and we were implementing Forest Kindergarten for 1 day a week. We were told this is what we're going to do. And, a couple of us were all over it. Yeah. Absolutely excited. A couple of people not sure, a couple like just not wanting to do it kind of thing. And it kind of divided the team a bit too, But this PD said, just think about this. Like there's all these new ideas coming. Should everybody be jumping on it? Like if you think about, if you like who do you want to go on holiday with? Look at the people. I think the plungers were in one corner, the waders were in another, and the toe tappers or whatever were in another. And they said, who do you want to go on holiday with? And of course, everybody wanted the plungers because we're all the fun ones, like, yeah, let's do blah, blah, blah. But then they said, but who do you want to book your holiday and organise it? And it wasn't us. It wasn't us. And it was like, basically, everybody had a place. And actually, instead of arguing or saying, well, you never want to try anything new, or like, you're always, all over it, just say, well, actually, it's great that we're different, because together, like as a team, it has to be better, right? Like obviously 2 plungers are going to have a great time, but they might not be the most organised kind of thing. So again, with the children, and have this gold nugget thing, just look at people's good points, and get the children to look at that with each other as well, and just like, what's so-and-so really good at, do you think, and what does he need help with maybe, and they really respond to that really well. So that, even just in life, try and look at people's good points. And of course, we've all got our faults and everything, but for good mental health, I think look for the gold nugget. That would be my advice, and a good learning thing for me too about myself.
Absolutely. What a wonderful takeaway, and what a great way to end this conversation, Jackie. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I feel like, it's always so lovely to talk to individuals who are in the field and so deeply passionate about their work. And I definitely got that from our conversation today, Jackie. So thank you.
Thank you. That was great talking to you too.